Hello and welcome to another episode of the Triple B podcast. That is the Buds, Bustin, Balls, and we are the Buds. I am Bauer Tendo. You can find me on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube. You are hopefully watching this on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter and all the crazy social medias. That is Bauer Tendo. And I recently went to an AEW show because I am awesome and I support AEW, unlike some people in this group, right? Looking at you, Matt. And speaking of Matt, by the way, to my side here is celiac_Matt. You can find him on Twitch Mondays and Tuesdays. And you can find him on other things, but you can find him on Twitch. And he is so bad for your health that even bread rejects him. I just want you to know that. And then below me here, the bottom, is Hero Omega Man X, SM Steven Streams. For that one day he will stream. I'm going to say it every time. Or, as we just call him, Scott, or Scotty Portapotty. And he has something to hide, because he's always got that thing up behind him. It cuts off half of his screen, and he's got a body back there. I know he does. He is a killer. But we love him anyway. We are the Buds. And today, we're not talking about Game of the Year. We're talking about our favorite games of 2023. That being said, before we get to the topic, what are you drinking? What are you playing?
I'm going to go first. I am playing Resident Evil 4 on stream, having a good time. We'll talk about more about that. A game I really, really want to talk about is Persona 5 Strikers. It is technically a sequel to Persona 5, but it's a hack and slash game, and it's actually good. Like, it has all the style and charm of Persona 5, but it's not turn-based. It's just mindless hack and slash made by the Dynasty Warrior folks. And I'm having a great time with it. So I have been vibing with that one quite a bit. As for what I'm drinking tonight, I'm having a Jack and Coke branded here, the Tennessee whiskey with the Coke, and it is delicious.
Oh, whiskey stash.
Delicious.
As for me, I am currently bouncing between Spider-Man 2 and a game that good old Mike over here pimped on me and showed off to me when I visited him this weekend. Vampire Survivors. Oh my god. Like, I started playing that game on Sunday, and I think I'm about 20 hours into it now at this point. Like, I've gone into that game hard. I am all in on Vampire Survivors. As far as tonight's drink, I am drinking the limited edition, crisp, delicious cranberry, or what is it, winter spice cranberry Sprite. It is excellent. This is my jam. This is the only reason I look forward to the holidays nowadays. I would recommend everybody around where I live goes in and grabs one, but they can't because I go to the store and buy them all up, and they can suck it because I'm monopolizing the entire supply of the soda. But
What flavor is winter spice? Is that like dander from Santa sprinkled upon Sprite?
That's good.
It's magical.
That's all I'm picturing, and now I hope the rest of you are picturing that one too. Wonderful. Hey, Mike.
I just
Hi.
picture him like, and all this white stuff just goes, pah, like powder.
And just like
children just scratching his beard.
it just makes like the jingling noise as he's scratching his head, and the dandruff is
No, that's when he scratches his crotch. That's when it jingles.
the jingle bells.
Jingle balls.
Jingle balls. Thank you.
There
Mike,
we go.
Mike,
There we go.
Mike
We got.
picked up what I was dangling there.
We. This is the content that you crave. So I am, playing Super Mario RPG. What a delightful game. I never played it. Like, I played just a little bit of it. I didn't really know anybody who owned it. I like kind of was at a friend's house. They weren't really a friend. Played like 15 minutes of it, and that was it.
Ouch! I thought we were friends. Wow, whatever. Just keep.
I was trying to keep it nice and civil, but okay. But it's delightful. It's very delightful. And like my other games that are kind of the filler, Forza Motorsport and Vampire Survivors, because Vampire Survivors is dope. And I'm actually gonna start my next run of Dead Space Remake to get that platinum trophy, baby. It's happening. And as for a drink, I got a unique one tonight. I am still drinking from a shoe, but I'm drinking cold brew out of a Game Boy from a
What?
shoe.
What?
This is nonsense.
Oh man, that New Balance flavor.
Ah, nostalgia. Anyway, so tonight, as we said earlier, we're talking about our favorite games we've played in 2023. That doesn't even necessarily mean they came out in 2023. I think they all came out in 2023. At least mine are, but we we have opinions on Game of the Year and Game Awards. But that's for another episode. So we're going to talk about our favorites of this year. And just to say, this isn't a standardized award show, so that's not what it is. It's so much cooler. This is the Buds Bustin Awards show. That's what this is. So strap in. Here we go. Matt, you go first, and let's do our normal. Let's do our third pick around the clock. Second pick around the clock. Our top pick. Go.
All right. So I kept all my games specifically to 2023. There's probably older games I played more this year, but I wanted to talk about like newer games. One game that I bought and beat recently because I got it on sale. It's a game set in a universe with just an unholy amount of lore that I know nothing about. I just thought this game looked really cool. The game is called Warhammer 40K or 40,000 Bolt Gun. It is a retro Doom inspired shooter set in the Warhammer 40K universe. You can edit the level of retroness if you want in a setting. It's an actual setting where you can kind of mess with some sliders to basically how retro do you want it to look. So
That's
you can make
cool.
it look like old school Doom where you don't know what's going on to a more stylish, very clear way to play the game, but still with that retro vibe, which is definitely what I did because I'm like, I want to see my game. But it has that setting, which is really, really cool. But if you hate yourself, you can make it look really ugly. I chose to keep it actually somewhat visible. The game is just a lot of fun. That's essentially what it breaks down to. A very fun game. Your secondary weapon is a permanent chainsaw sword that you can use to like lunge at your enemies. So you're just blasting with your like, I think like 6 or 8 different guns, and there's a guy over there, but he's on a ledge, and just like, let me just rev up this chainsaw, and you just jump across the level. The chainsaw this guy in half, pixelated blood and guts and stuff goes everywhere, and it's just stupid, stupid fun. The difficulty I think is pretty good. I did die a few times at certain bits where you kind of have to be a bit more strategic, other than just like spray and pray, which is most of the game, which is a lot of fun. But there are even harder difficulties that you can turn it on if you're a sadist and kind of hate yourself. But I did like the balance quite a bit. I definitely think it is worth a play if on sale. My only beef with it is I wish it had a map of some capacity, just because there are secrets in each individual level that give you some boons just for that level essentially, and some of these are hidden behind walls that are just, they look like a regular wall. So I would love a map. I think that would have made the game a lot better, especially because there is a lot of backtracking in certain levels. That's my only real big beef with the game, is I wish it had a map. But at its core, the gameplay was just a lot of fun. I got a good deal on it. I think it's on sale right now. I do think both of you would genuinely enjoy it. If you are okay buying a game that you won't get 100% achievements on, you should probably get it, because the secrets are rather annoying to find, I will say. But the gameplay itself is just an absolute blast. So it's a retro-inspired game. In the Warhammer universe, you play as a space marine with a chainsaw sword, a bunch of other different guns and stuff, and it's just fun. I had an absolute blast with it. Definitely pick it up on sale. I'm a big fan of that one. I want to ask Scott though. That was my third game of the year. What is yours? Lay it
My
on me.
third game. Well, first off, gotta give the Scott honorable mention. Woo, 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 woo. Honorable mention for Scott for the year 2023 is going to be Diablo 4. And the reason I'm doing an honorable mention is Diablo 4 was actually going to be game number 3 until my new game number 3 showed up. I'm not going to talk too much about Diablo 4. I very much enjoy it. I know the game has lots of controversy about it, like with the balancing, with the patches they released. Didn't bother me that much. I am greatly bothered by the microtransactions and the price of that, so that definitely dinged the game. And the game is made kind of being a live service game, which is fine, and the bones of it are good. I feel like a year 2 years from now, it's going to be in a great place. But right now in this state, knowing it's supposed to be a game you're supposed to keep coming back to, with the amount of content that's in there right now, though, is pretty bare. So again, they have a great thing going. Really excited for how that game's going to end up evolving. Really enjoy it for what it is. But yeah, it definitely needs a little bit more time to bake, in my opinion. But Diablo 4, honorable mention for Scott. Scott's number 3 game, the game that stole Diablo 4's spot, is going to be a game I actually started 2 weeks ago that I had already mentioned earlier in this podcast, and that is Spider-Man 2. So, so in case you don't know the story about Spider-Man 2, and there is probably like what 3 different Spider-Man 2 video games out there. This is the one that just came out. Well, obviously we're talking about 2023 games, but a sequel to Insomniac's Spider-Man 1, a game that I actually played a lot later than most people. I actually played that game around this time last year, the first Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2, going to get the negative out of the way first. And I guess this will also kind of describe why it's only number 3 on my list and not higher. It has a pretty rough first half of the story. It really is. I know Matt wants to play the game. I'm not going to go into story details, for his sake and for the sake of all you listening right now who haven't played this game yet. First half of the game, though, is definitely rough, especially the sections that revolve around Miles Morales. One really interesting thing the game does, where at first it doesn't seem like a strength just because of how weak I view Miles' portion of the game, but it actually does start becoming a real strength later on. And something very unique about the game is you can actually jump between Miles Morales and Peter Parker's Spider-Man. And certain missions are only available to, the certain Spider-Mans you're playing. They both have very distinct move sets. Like, it's not just like, oh, like when you play Miles Morales versus Spider-Man 1, it does feel pretty similar to the play style between the two. Spider-Man 2, very, very different play styles between the two. Something they do to go and really spice up the combat, make it fun. A thing, now that we're talking about the combat, I love the combat. Spider-Man 1, and especially Spider-Man Miles Morales, while I enjoyed the combat, I kind of got into a point where I just was spamming one combo over and over again for most of the fights because it worked. And I felt no need to go and spice it up and explore all the other millions of combos, special moves you're able to do. Spider-Man 2, well, it is incredibly deep, and it is at sometimes like a little bit intimidating, like all the different moves they throw at you, giving you the option to weave together in combat. Once you start getting comfortable with that game's combat, you start doing other moves and exploring and expanding, the variety of fighting techniques you do during combat more naturally. I think it's very subtle and very gradual, but I think they did a really impressive thing where now I'm not just spamming the same 2 moves over and over again. I'm actually like, hey, I'm going to go about this fight this way, or I'm going to go and use this type of play style. Very, very good combat. Definitely, I think so far the best of the 3 games that have come out. But the final thing I want to say about the game, what has really made me fall in love with it, especially like the last 10, 15 hours I've played it, is the story. Maybe saying like, but Scott, you just insulted the story earlier. The first half of the story, that story comes back in a big way starting around the half mark of that game, maybe even the 2/3 mark. And I know I said in previous podcasts, like, oh, if somebody says, I'll kick you in the balls and then I'll give you the world's best ice cream, I'm not going to do that. This game is a slight exception. I will maybe not full on kick it in the balls, maybe just like a flick or something I can tolerate for the goodness of this game.
You got to scoop. It scoops you.
Whoop. It's like, oh, that wasn't pleasant, but all right, we got that uncomfortableness out of the way. The great thing about the first Spider-Man game that they totally did the same thing in this one, but blew it out of the park way more, is the first Spider-Man game was a pretty original story. As a person who's been into Spider-Man lore since being a wee little Scott, they definitely took a lot of liberties with a lot of the character backgrounds in Spider-Man 1, and it was a really original story as a result. Despite them taking all these liberties on the story, different, origins for different characters in there, it still felt like a Spider-Man game. Spider-Man 2 takes that to the next level. It is an incredibly original game. One thing that I will spoil, and I'm sorry for anybody who's not aware of this, but they did kind of focus on it pretty heavily in the marketing material, is Venom is not Eddie Brock. So if you're a Spider-Man purist, you'll be like, oh, it's not Eddie Brock, which actually is funny because in the Spider-Man comic, I think Venom has been not Eddie Brock more than it's been Eddie Brock in the life of the comics. But Eddie Brock is the one who is most closely associated with being Venom. He is not Venom in this game. So far, from what I've played, Eddie Brock is not even in the game. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, that's sacrilegious that you have Venom in the game and no Eddie Brock. They do such a freaking good job that at this point, I'm like, you know what? To hell with Eddie Brock. Like, in the official story comic canon of Spider-Man, if they made this character Venom, I'd be all for it. They do such a good job. Again, so many characters in there. You go and see, like, oh wait, they introduced that character. That is nothing like they were like in the comics, but it still feels like Spider-Man. They pull it off. It feels good, completely different, but somehow still feels right. It is such an amazing thing they do. That these are game developers, and they do, again, as I previously mentioned, great job of the combat, great job of the graphics of New York, and they somehow have out Spider-Man storied the actual Spider-Man people over at Marvel Comics. It is definitely a feat. I love it. Incredible game, Spider-Man 2. With that said, I'm only actually about 70% into the game, and unless it goes and kind of does a big raspberry at that point, I don't know, maybe by the end of this, when it's all said and done, it could have taken my second spot. I doubt it, but definitely I'm very excited to finish up Spider-Man, despite the fact that I'm not finished with it. I think it more than earned that third place on my list.
I'm a bit shocked Diablo wasn't there, like, is an honorable mention, because that's a game you spend a lot of time in. But then again, I spend most of my gaming time in Overwatch, and I wouldn't put that on a list either. So I get that. But Spider-Man, I am very interested in getting to eventually.
And I'll just go ahead because I have my own honorable mentions before I get into my pick, and one of them is Spider-Man 2. And it's largely what Scott has said. We've already talked about this. I have completed the game. I platinumed the whole thing, so that's, telling something as well. I really didn't like the first half. I absolutely love the second half. And just like he said, I am a super Spidey fan, and I was okay with Venom. I was more than okay with Venom. I was actually really happy with how they did Venom. Um, the reason it did not make my list is because it was a tale of two games. So that first half was just awful, and the second half is so good that I wish that they just condensed the first half into, like, let's get going. The Miles Morales stuff, it's not good. His side stuff is not good. There are a couple of surprises that Scott has not come across yet, which I'm really excited for him to be like, Mike, I know what you're talking about. Super cool. And I had a lot of bugs. A lot of, like, some of which were like I had to close the game down and reboot my PlayStation.
Some were funny though. You sent me one of, like, just a floating Peter Parker head in, like, the start menu,
Yes,
and I
and
thought that was hilarious.
it's like, Peter, are
Sorry.
you okay?
I know this is Mike's time, but if we're talking about great Spider-Man bugs, I just have to say my favorite real quick is in the game. While you're swinging around New York, you can come across random crimes and totally beat up the thugs and break it up. Sometimes when you beat up most of the thugs, a couple of them will get away and jump into a car and drive off, and then you're supposed to, like, chase after the car and stop it. So here I am breaking up a fight. Two guys run into the car and drive off, and they drive right into a building. Like, I don't mean they hit the wall and crash; they just whoop phase through the wall. And here I am, Spider-Man, where I'm just, well, guess they got away. Not much I can do about that one. And it gave me a good laugh. But I don't know. I almost feel like their bugs are a little bit endearing.
Oh, you haven't hit the bad ones then. You haven't hit any bad. Mine, I went through a building and I was in the middle of a chase scene in part of the story. You may not be there yet, but there's a chase scene, and in the middle of the chase scene, I see the person I'm chasing just stop on the side of a building, and I thought, oh, they're waiting for me. I fell behind or something. I don't know. And I literally went through a building, and then I went down underneath the city, and it was like I was in water, and I couldn't get it. And I tried to reboot the game, and it kept fading out at the title screen. It would fade out, come back, fade out. So I literally had to close the game. I tried rebooting the game, didn't work. I had to turn off my PlayStation and then turn it back on. And then
that was a feature. No, that's a feature. You just didn't pick up on it.
Really, really brought me down. Now, maybe by the time you got to it, they patched a lot of that stuff out. So anyway, Spider-Man 2 is an honorable mention still. Metroid Prime 1 Remastered. Yes, that came out this year, believe it or not. And that game, an already great game, and they gave it. That's how remasters should be. It's the same game, HD, but a little bit more. Gave you a little bit more. It is phenomenal. Runs great, looks great. Already a great game. And then Resident Evil 4 Remake. I was so skeptical that they were going to butcher this, especially after Resident Evil 3. I was not a huge fan of what they did with that, being a huge fan of Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 4 Remake, good stuff. So almost made this list too. But what I do want to talk about, my number 3, is another remake. So this is the year of good remakes, so I'm all for it. This is Dead Space Remake. Dead Space came out in 2008 originally. I was instantly hooked. Loved the game. The gameplay mechanics, the UI specifically, was literally game-changing. Like, it changed a lot of other games moving forward, and that I replayed the original on my PC, not like last year, and it still played great. Like, there were some things that were antiquated, but most of it was just top-notch still. So I had really high expectations for this, and I was a bit worried, especially after playing games like Callisto Protocol, where I was like, oh, it's like a new Dead Space, and it was not at all, period. And I was very, very worried, especially because it's EA. And they knocked it out of the park, 100%. So it is a faithful remake. It's just improved graphics, and they tweaked some of the gameplay mechanics to get it more streamlined, specifically like with your maps and a few of those things there. So they added things to it, but not too much. It is very faithful. And let me tell you, holy hell, this game looks so damn good. I love graphics, but I'm not like the graphics snob, okay? I play on my Switch. Most games are fine for me. I play on Xbox, I play on PC, I play like graphics matter, but they're not what really matters to me. This game needs it, and they nailed it out of the park. Like, the aesthetic, the atmosphere, they kept all of that while revitalizing the look of everything. Everything looks the same, but not quite the same, and it's perfect. It is so damn good, and it speaks volumes to the original game that they didn't really change too much of the gameplay. They just updated the visuals a little bit and a couple of tweaks to the UI stuff, and that's it. And it's so good. And maybe some people go, well, that doesn't warrant $70 or $60 or whatever you're buying it for. Look, man, I have put hours and hours into that game. There were no bugs I had it from day one. There were no bugs. It looked great. It played great. It's awesome. And let me tell you the final reason why this is on my list. The audio. It's like we talk about audio in games every freaking episode. It is so damn good. If you play this game, please play it with headphones. Please play it with headphones. It will scare the hell out of you. Just go into a hallway and put the controller down. It's super cool. Now, there are cool features with the PlayStation 5 DualSense with the microphone, like when they talk on your suit, your rig, it sounds like it's coming out from below you, which is like in the game, Isaac's thing pops up from below him, his little video, and the audio kind of pops up from there too. So it's kind of cool holding it, but headphones, because the audio, hearing a little girl whisper, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star" in your ear, there's something just awful about that. And it's so well done. Such a good game, such a good remake that it made it into my top 3 for the year. That's crazy.
I haven't played the Dead Space remake. I love the original. Scott and I have talked about this a bit, that it
You
might be
two
a
would
little.
hate it. You would hate it because of the spooks.
We exactly. See, we loved the first one, but this one's like, oh man, it might be a little too modern, scary for me to play this one.
Me knowing, and they did change up some. So like, I used to know it like the back of my hand. Like,
Right.
Okay, if I go around this corner, there's a necromorph. Blah blah blah. Like, I played through it over and over and over. I got 100% achievements back on the 360. All that stuff. there were still moments in this game where I was like, oh, and it like legitimately got me, like legit, and I was like, ooh, I don't want to play without the lights on for a little while. It's You guys would hate it. You'd love it, but you'd hate it.
Love and hate it. Yeah, that sounds good. Well, my second game, and I do want to preface before I go into more games, is that um, one of Mike's games that he's going to talk about is on my list, but I like to keep a little bit of variety. So I'll let him get to one of those that should be on my list. But the next two are very, very good games. But the one I want to talk about, and I might be in a minority here, and I have a story about a GameStop employee getting mad at me for liking this game. I bought and enjoyed a game called Final Fantasy 16. Now, if you know me, you know there it is. You know me.
Boo this man.
If you know me, you know I'm not big on Final Fantasy. I'm not big on turn-based. It's just not really for me. This game does not feel like either. And that is the biggest compliment that I can give, or maybe the biggest insult I can give. I don't know, dude. For me, though, I absolutely love it. For me, what I was vibing with is the story overall was captivating. The main story, at least, I should really stress. Side quests were hit and miss, and given a crap, but the big moments were very big moments with stupendous like main musical theme that would kind of mix and match throughout the game itself that really just hyped up these moments. So that score just like pumped you up. The combat is not turn based, it is full on hack and slash. It is a free range hack and slash, and I love me a good hack and slash, my beloved. And this one is pretty simple, to be honest, but the variety lies in the abilities that you unlock and equip. And here's one of the best things I think every game needs to do: you can reset your abilities at any freaking time. Any freaking time, unless you're in combat, I should say. You could reset your abilities. Like, this looks like a cool thing. Let's go down this rabbit hole, see what this does. I don't like it. Reset. Let's go try the other one. Games need to do that. I hate games so much where you're like, hey, here's a million stats and perks that you can invest in. You better hope it doesn't suck. Otherwise, you've basically ruined the game for you. Or they say, hey, pay us a bunch of money to reset your specs. I respected the respec so very much because it didn't punish me for mixing and matching. And it really helped me get to a nice, like, tuned combat that just really meshes with me. So the combat, I will say, is pretty easy. It is very button mashy, but with the unique and variant abilities, you have a lot of like variety that you can do to really make a gameplay style that just kind of suits you. And I love that. The game itself was also just gorgeous. The main story was enthralling, and the combat was exactly my cup of tea. Side quests towards the end of the game did really start to drag. And I think they knew this. The side quests are there for lore and world building, which they have a really cool world that they built. Take this as you will. Mike equated it to Final Fantasy, but Game of Thrones like storytelling. And while I've never watched Game of Thrones because I don't particularly care to watch Game of Thrones, it definitely has those vibes that I am familiar with, just kind of secondhand for what Game of Thrones is. It's basically Final Fantasy, but like medieval England, but with like dragons and things like that. And it's a hack and slash that is just so fun. And I think they kind of realized that like not everyone wants to do the side quest. So they did something really cool, and I wish more games did this, is the side quests that actually give you something really, really good, not just like XP and money or some healing items. The ones that give you like really big gameplay changing stuff, they have a little plus next to it. So when you see like your map of quests, they're like, hey, here's all these quests, but you better do this one.
That's huge. That's
You
so
better
huge.
do this one. And I freaking love that. I did all of it because I wanted to. Um, but just knowing that's there for anyone that does replay games, which typically not me, but if I ever were to replay this game, I'd be like skipping all those, only going after the plus ones because those are ones with the big story and the big gameplay changing mechanics. You can skip them all entirely, but you don't want to. So if you play the game, do at least the side quest with that plus button. I love so much that they put in that feature. And that's for folks that just really want to focus on just blasting through the game. And I get that. So game was gorgeous. Combat was great. I loved how they actually managed the side quests, given not all the side quests were that good. I think flaws with the game is the main hub where you are to initiate conversations and certain quests while it marks it on the map, which is great. Actually walking around this place kind of takes way too long for my taste. And again, some of the quests kind of dragged on a bit, but the combat, while simplistic, has a lot of variety. The enemies that you fight are super, super cool. The story I found super captivating. And the fact that I like this Final Fantasy game a lot probably tells you that Final Fantasy fans did not like this game a lot. They just didn't. And my story is when I went to GameStop, because I basically beat games, trade them in, get another game. I know that's who I am. I got Lies of P with it, which was a great trade. I traded in the game. The guy thought like, oh, he didn't like it, so he's traded it in. He goes, yeah, this game wasn't very good. And I was just like, I actually really liked it. I just beat it, and I'm not going to play it again. I had fun, and the look of disdain and disgust this GameStop employee gave me because I dared to like a Final Fantasy game that wasn't like the other ones was so hilarious to me. And then it was capped off by him kind of like bending over to open a shelf to get, the game that I wanted. And just his whole entire butt crack was just hanging out there. Just full on sweaty. He was the whole like actually meme guy getting mad at me for liking a game that he didn't. And I just thought that was hilarious. But Final Fantasy 16, absolutely loved, had a good time with it. I don't think either of you played it. I don't think either of you will play it. But for me, I had a great time with Final Fantasy. That's my number 2.
I played the demo and I had an okay time. At first I was kind of bored to tears. I was like, there's way too much story in this demo. But they literally are like, look, this is the beginning of the game. And you get a certain, like, they stop you at a certain point that you can pick up from there at a save point. I'll get to it eventually when it goes on a deep sale. But about your GameStop employee, if I were you and he like gave me that attitude, I would have been like, you know what? I don't want to return it today, and then like taking the game back, and then like go, return it to some other GameStop, right? But like just to throw it back in his face, be like, in fact, talking to you, I don't want to turn it in.
I'm gonna keep the game.
I'm gonna keep the game. I like it that much. It's so good. Goodbye, and then just leave so that he can just like stew in his own filth.
There was some filth he was definitely stewing in. Funny is though, that was my second GameStop I went to, because when I was going to get Lies of P, it wasn't at my GameStop. So this was a different GameStop that I usually go to. And I'm just like, bro, I just want Lies of P. Just give me that game. Just give me the game, dude. That was fun. But that was my number 2. I enjoyed Final Fantasy 16 quite a bit. Let's give it to Scott. Scott, you number 2, tell me about yours.
So this is going to be interesting for the fact that if nobody puts this game on their list, then I don't think anybody would raise an eyebrow. If it is on their list, then for the most part, it's going to be number 1. So I feel it's going to be a little controversial. That's actually only second on mine. And I'll talk a little bit more about the reason why when I talk about my first game. But for Scott, game number 2 for the year 2023, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. So we've talked a lot about Legends of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom on this podcast. We had a whole episode in our first season just talking about this game. Game is fantastic. I love it. Again, if you want to hear more about my thoughts on it, go back to one of the previous episodes. I'm going to more focus on thoughts of that game since I last recorded this podcast talking to you guys about the game. Obviously, since we recorded that podcast, I have beat it. That game has one of the most epic, badass final boss fights I have ever played. There were scenes in that boss fight where I was just kind of like screaming out loud, like, oh God, oh, whoa, what the? And it was great. I almost want to go, haven't beat it a second time, but I almost want to go through that final boss fight a second time just to pause the game at certain moments and take screen caps of it with my Switch and just save the pictures and use it as a desktop wallpaper. So, I mean, there was just such amazing, fantastic visuals in that final boss fight. One thing that I also very much appreciated about the game is it finally did character development, progression. Like Ganondorf, he's been in, 7 Zelda games so far. They actually finally gave him a little character development. Hey, we finally got to hear him talk.
Made him very handsome.
No, he ain't handsome. He's sexy.
He's sexy.
He's sexy.
Oh, if I didn't want to keep this at a brisk pace, I'd be running over and getting my sexy Ganondorf amiibo that I have in the back right now. But yes, they finally did stuff with Ganondorf. They finally gave development to Zelda. Link kind of just still doesn't say anything, and he's just a big himbo. But, that's why we love Link. But the game, again, we talked earlier, great combat, super, super, innovative design things they added to there. Some of my critiques still remain critiques for that game, or still remain for that game. Like, I still don't like Zoomer Hand. I mean Ultra Hand. Don't like the feature at all. I very much appreciated that after you got off the tutorial island, they kind of dialed it down on the zoominess with that. And while it's still something you would have to whip out here and there, you could definitely play most of the game without having to use it if you really tested it, like I did. And one other thing that kind of I have to knock the game for, which may seem almost sacrilegious, is I do feel like there is almost too much content and it was too big. Like, slight spoilers, there's a fifth sage in the game. And all I'm just going to say is that whole entire arc was insanely unneeded. And I very much was just like, oh my God, can we just get through this section already? And that was the point where it kind of hit me where, like, all right, I think officially we jumped the shark a little bit on the story. I think we need to wrap this up. And my advice, and I know it's kind of similar to Matt's experience with that game, to anyone out there, where when you get to the point where I think a lot of people start feeling it, it's like, all right, I'm not really feeling the story anymore. It's going on too long. Just power through. Stop exploring other regions. Stop doing any side mission stuff. When you start feeling that urge, just beat the game. Go for it. And like I said, once you get to the end and the final boss fight kicks in, then you're going to go back to being like, oh yeah, this game, holy shit. With that said, I probably only have 3/4 of the map discovered. There's literally whole entire regions of the game, of the map, I haven't really explored. I've glided across it. I dropped by any shrines I could find, but I haven't done any significant exploration of it. And I'm kind of fine with that. Like, I am. I got more. That was probably my number one most played game of 2023. Will I go back to it one day? It's one of those really intimidating games where you can't just go and decide to pick it up and it's like, oh, I'm going to play Tears of the Kingdom now. Like, you have to, it's a commitment. You have to go, like, got to work up to it. So one day I'll go back into it, maybe explore those other 2/3 of, or 2/5 of the map. But great experience, great final boss encounter. Good, finally, they have progression with the characters. Huge step for this franchise as a whole. 2 thumbs up for my number 2 game of 2023, Tears of the Kingdom.
I like that you said you're okay not seeing the whole map. And my
I
first thought was
really am.
like, my first thought was, if Nintendo had achievements, how much would that change for you?
Oh, completely.
That's
Completely.
right.
Completely change
Yep.
it.
All right,
100% completely.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So that's an argument.
curious.
That
Point
could be an
taken.
argument
Point
for
taken.
that could be an argument for
Achievements.
no achievements, right? So like Nintendo's like, we don't
Or
want that.
or
Just to-
achievements.
Like we purposely did not give this for your well-being.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Like, honestly, there's a couple of games I probably wouldn't have got to this year if I kept on playing Tears of the Kingdom. No Spider-Man 2, wouldn't have time. I'd probably still be on Diablo 4 at this point.
That's fair. And
Nice.
so for my second game, Matt, it's really funny that you mentioned that you returned a game. You returned Final Fantasy 16. For what game was that you picked up?
Lies of P, and I'm glad you're the one talking about it.
And who was harassing our chat about playing this game?
It was, listen, it was you. Like, so the biggest motivator for me getting the game was actually my wife who wanted it. She watched a stream of it and she said, "Matt, I want this game." I'm like, all right. And you started talking about it. I'm like, dang, maybe I'll like this too. And then like we got it and I actually started playing it. And I'm not a Souls-like guy, not my thing. Freaking love this game. And the reason it's not on my list is because of the game that you're about to say. Mike, what is your number 2?
It is Lies of P. It is Lies of P. The P stands for
twist.
Pinocchio. What a twist. So this is the... Okay, I'm going to say something here, and if... Maybe this is what makes this go viral, is the fans coming after me about saying this, okay? Let me preface this by saying, I have played and beaten Dark Souls 1 Remastered. I didn't play the original. Dark Souls 1 Remastered, I have played and beaten. Dark Souls 3, I have played and beaten. Bloodborne, freaking fantastic. Played and beaten. Sekiro, I played. I did not beat it. I did not like that one because of various reasons. I'm not talking about that. I played Demon Souls on the PS5, the remake. Loved it. Played the hell out of that game. I am very familiar with these games, and I like a lot of these games. Lies of P is better than all of them. Come at me, bro. I don't care. they actually tell a story. So this is the best Souls or Souls-like game that I have played. It does not have the jank that Souls games have. It doesn't have the jank. It actually tells a story in addition to the environmental storytelling. And what I mean by that, to clarify, is environmental storytelling is in all the Souls games, all that stuff, where it's like you come into, like, you walk into an alleyway and there's some bodies over here and there's a blown out building or something, and you go, well, what happened here? And it tells a story of a town that got demolished by something, and you kind of learn along the way. Okay, Lies of P does that, and the world does actually evolve in where you're at. And Matt won't know this yet, he'll see it coming up, but it actually tells a story, and it's a play on the story of Pinocchio, and it is so damn good. The aesthetics in this game, okay, look, the different takes on these characters is so cool. Like Jiminy Cricket, okay? Jiminy is in this game, but not Jiminy. It's spelled Gemini, but the way they pronounce it is Gemini. And it is a puppet or robot that you carry along like a lantern that talks to you. And as the game progresses, he becomes more cohesive in a personality. Why? It's so good. I cannot. And like characters like the fox and the cat think of the Disney cartoon. Okay, they're in this game, but they are people who are basically hired assassins. So there's a group of people that are hired assassins, and they wear masks. So the masks that these two people are wearing, the fox and the cat, and there's a whole story, a whole backstory for them, and it is so good. And my favorite part, the game is hard, but not like how Souls games are hard, where they just go, I'm going to ruin your day. This game goes, look, I'm gonna be hard. You can be better than this. It's more encouraging in a way. It's hard to say that, really describe it. It's good. You actually do get good in the game. And there are ways to help you along the way. Like you can summon, it's not a person, it's just an NPC. You can summon an NPC in battles, but you better make sure you have enough star fragments, because if you die, you just lost a star fragment. You got to use another one to call that NPC back. And I will say this is a huge deal. Matt will appreciate this. It had multi-boss fights that I didn't outright hate. That is saying something, because as soon as there are more than one boss that I've got to fight at once, I instantly am like, all right, my goal is to get past this. I don't care about anything. You can tell story in the middle of this thing. I don't give a shit. I want to get past it. I hate it. I didn't hate him here, because at first I was like, this is rough. I got past him. Lies of P looks great. The music is great. The aesthetic is great. The story is great. The environmental story is great. My one critique, I have one critique, and it's kind of along the lines of what Scott was saying with Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's a little too long. I think they could have cut some sections out, made it a little bit more concise, and it would have been an instant replay, like playthrough. I plan on replaying it again, but it would have been an instant, like, cool, let's start over, let's do it again for me, if they just shortened it up a little bit. So, Matt, I know you've played a little bit of it. What do you think?
I absolutely love this game. Absolutely love this game. I agree with everything that you've said about it in the positive sense. For the negative sense, I can't comment too much on that just because I haven't beaten the game yet. I did feel very, very overwhelmed because it's still a game that doesn't just hand feed you everything, which is very Souls like. And some people love it, some won't like it. But I think from an accessibility standpoint, for anyone that wants to try a Souls like game, this is the one to try. No, it's still freaking hard, but it does the get good thing, it's there. And if you can't get good, you can bring in an AI to help you. And that is an actual big game changer. Like the first 3 or 4 like big fights, I beat without it. I died a ton, but I eventually beat it and it felt so good. But then there are some bosses where I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this like at all. I'm going to bring in the AI after failing a bunch of times, and I was able to beat it pretty quickly. Does it lessen the value? That's depends on you, the self, but it's a mechanic that was built into the game specifically to get you through these bosses. But you still have to do work for it.
Yeah, you still have to earn that win.
You
Still,
got to earn the win. And I think the biggest thing for me, at first I was overwhelmed with it, is the customization that you can have with your weapons, because there's like a bunch of different blades and a bunch of different handles, and you can mix and match the blades and handles, which give you different movements and abilities. And now I found my absolute favorite jam. I don't know if it's the best weapon. I don't know if it's considered the worst weapon. All I know is it's the funniest weapon, and I love it. It's a giant saw blade as tall as you are on a little dagger that I just swing around, and it's stupendous, and I love it. This is a stupendous game. This is a great game. I do genuinely think Scott would like it. I'm not going to, hound him to play it like I did for Vampire Survivors. This one, though, I think Scott would enjoy as well. But this is the best Souls-like game I've played, given mine is a small sampling, but it's accessible, and that's a big deal.
and before we get to your final pick, it's on Game Pass.
There it is. It's on Game Pass for those of you that
Preach
have
it. Praise up.
Praise the Game Pass.
Yeah, there's your bud plug for the Game Pass, everybody. All right, let me talk about my game of the year. I debated slightly if I wanted to add it, but the question was, what is your game of the year? And this is my game of the year, and it is a remake. And the question is, should a remake be eligible for game of the year? I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next podcast. For me, don't give a crap. This was my game of the year. It is Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 back in, I think it was 2004, 2005 on the GameCube when it came out, instantly became one of my favorite games of all time. To this day, it is a top 5 games for me. Out of every video game I played, Resident Evil 4, the OG, is on my top 5 list. And this game absolutely replicated and improved upon everything in Resident Evil 4. I often make the joke, Resident Evil 4 is a bunch of set pieces where you start it after you beat the game a million times. You start it, you go, oh, this part, I don't like this part. And then you beat it. And then you do the next part. Oh, I don't like this part. And then you beat the game. I'm like, I didn't like all those parts, but I keep playing and I beat it. I do like this part. So all that is removed from the game, because even the bits that I remember thinking like, okay, generally this part was a bit challenging or not fun, it's just good. Everything is perfect in this game. Anything that was remotely slightly bad, they completely like revitalized it. This is one of the best remakes that I have ever played. Case in point is the combat, which was already great, slow, methodical, cerebral on purpose. They gave you more flexibility with that as well, more flexibility to play a bit more to your style. The upgrading system is even better and feels so satisfying. You feel in control of every situation, which is a really big deal. And it, again, makes the most of even the most disliked parts for me, such as the Chainsaw Sisters, such as the hedge maze with the dogs, which everyone that's played Resident Evil 4, I say hedge maze, you immediately went like, ooh. You exhaled a little bit. They made that actually like more enjoyable and like less stressful in a way. They have done everything better in this game. They made me also want to actually play the shooting range. There's a shooting range in the first one. I didn't care about it. This one, they made it so fun, and they actually made it worth it, at least getting some of the stuff done. Plus, the music is so good. Like that Spanish guitar that kind of kicks in.
There's a trophy tied to it too.
Yes, there's a trophy. I don't care, but it is fun. That's what I'm saying. It's fun. And also, what I still love about this game, it maintained the charm of Resident Evil 4. Like it's not a horror game. It's not. It's an action adventure game with spoopy elements, essentially. It's a semi-spoopy game still set in 2004, 2005, which is hilarious. And the purposeful camp and jokes are still embedded in there. And there are so many like hell yeah moments in the game when you clear certain areas and bosses. It's so good. This is probably the best remake I have ever played. It is my favorite game of 2023, and I'm having a blast streaming it on my Twitch channel. This game is so freaking good. I love it. My game of the year, Resident Evil 4. Boom.
Everything you said. That's all. Scott, your turn. I agree with
There
Matt.
we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is. Scott's number 1 pick, 2023. God of War Ragnarok. Nah, if we went Oscar rules and you do the last 12 months and not a calendar year, it would be God of War Ragnarok because it falls within the last 12 months. But no, we're talking strictly games that came out in 2023. In the case of my number one game, though, it barely came out in 2023. It actually was one of the first games that came out this year. I'm going to give little teasers and see if Matt and Mike can figure it out. They probably can't because this is a major dark horse. So a little background why this game got number one on my list over Tears of the Kingdom, despite the fact that I probably only played this game like a fraction as much as I did Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe like Tears of the Kingdom I played 200 times more than this one. And here's the reason. Take a movie like Avengers Endgame. Endgame kicked ass. I enjoyed it. It was great. It was also something that had a major studio behind it. It had years and years of buildup. It had the gigantic Marvel fan base behind it. It had big names working on it, tons of money for graphics. So it's like, yeah, this is a really good movie. But then you got like those smaller movies, those like No Country for Old Men. Granted, even though I said in previous episode I wasn't super big on it, I wouldn't consider No Country for Old Men a huge blockbuster. It was very down to earth, modest budget. When you go and compare the mega blockbusters from Hollywood with the more smaller, intimate, creative, like you didn't have a lot of resources and you created something really cool. I haven't seen the movie yet, but the movie I think of saying this is Everywhere, Everything All at Once. How Matt said they worked on a really small budget and it was a lot of like, in a case for a lot of these people, like their first movie or one of their first major movies working on. With all that said, that is the reason why I'm going to go and say this game is my game of the year, because it came out of nowhere. It didn't come from much. Very few people worked on it. And that is the game Dredge. Dredge, I've talked about a lot in the first season of our podcast, talked about that game, why I loved it, why I was digging it. So again, if you want to know more of my thoughts on that one, you can go revisit it. But a couple of the things where since I played it and just kind of started thinking about it some more, we've discussed before how at least I was always about long games. Like, if I can't get at least 100 hours of gameplay out of this game, I don't want to buy it. Dredge is a short game. I platinumed that game in under 10 hours. Some people out there may say, nope, I'm not for that at all. This game is a perfect example that quantity doesn't equal quality. I would argue that the game ended just when it needed to. Not that the story was getting bad, not that I was getting sick of it, like Tears of the Kingdom at a point. It just ended where it needed to end. It's like, this is good. It was great. Maybe an hour more. Maybe they could have pulled off another hour. Who knows? But I felt like where they ended this game was great. I was satisfied. Art direction of that game, fantastic. Again, another example of less can be more. Very simple, hand drawn, nothing overly flashy, but very beautiful. This game has some haunting visuals that I've seen. Some of the creatures you fish for, they're really fucked up. Like, they're really fucked up. I still I just randomly think of some of them when I'm at the supermarket and I see a fish on display. I'm like, I kind of brought me back to that like messed up little sucker I saw before. And speaking of that, I would say out of all the games I played this year, I keep thinking about certain moments in that game that still come back. Like, I will give, sorry, spoilers, not too big of a spoiler, but there's moments where you kind of see like really interesting, weird things in the ocean while you're going from island to island. You're like, what's this weird ass thing? Let me go and take a look at it. Definitely the whole curiosity killed the cat describes it to a T. Most of the time, if you see something really interesting in the ocean and you go for a closer look, you're not going to come back from it. It's going to be a game over and you're going to restart. Do you regret it? No. It's like, wow, that was really fucking cool. Kind of sucked what it did to me, but that was definitely an experience. Did not see that coming. So this game, great experience game. It was short, but it was sweet. And it didn't overstay its welcome. It was strong from beginning to end. And one thing I'm very pleased to announce is I think it just had a DLC come out. And it has another DLC scheduled to come out next year. And I'm very excited to play those. I'm actually going to wait till both the DLCs come out and play them together all at once. And it also get this, free updates. It's regularly adding updates. And these updates aren't like adding brand new islands or stuff. It's adding like features like, oh, here, we'll add some stuff to let you customize your boat. Now you can find accessories and pimp out your boat. Oh, here's like here's a easy mode. Like if you don't like the spoops and you just like the fishing gameplay element of it, just turn on fisherman mode. No spoops will happen to you. You just enjoy catching fish and see how big of a fish you catch. Like I very much love it when games continuously update for free out of the goodness of their heart. This game was a huge blockbuster success. Like it sold like I want to say 1 million copies within the first couple weeks of release, which very much surpassed the publisher's expectation, the team who worked on it, which I think was just a team of 4 people from New Zealand or Australia. And again, you can kind of tell it was a successful game from all this free content they're making. And that's really refreshing. You reward a developer, they reward you back. If it wasn't a smash success, they made the game, it sold modestly, it probably would have been the end of it. But they're like, hey, this is making a lot of money. Are we going to go and milk the hell out of this? No, that we have the money. This is a financial success. That's reward the player base. That's work on these cool features that we wish we could have worked on, but have budget constraints. And now that we have the money, we're not going to just run away to the bank with it. Let's actually go and turn around and continue to develop this game. And these people have already given their money to us. Let's make that money go even further that they spent for this game. So, Dredge, Scott's 2023 Game of the Year.
Nice.
Game looked cool. My wife watched a stream of it, of a pretty big name streamer that was just playing that game. So I caught a decent amount of it. I was just like, this is pretty cool. And I don't think you played it yet, Mike. I know Scott's pimped it out to you specifically.
It's in my queue. It's in my queue.
You will like it. When you get to it, you're going to be like, yep, you guys were right. Scott, you were right. This is my jam. I think your vibe with it. I think that's a good choice.
Yeah, I'm okay with that beating Tears of the Kingdom for you.
Yeah. Thank you for validating and giving approval for what my most liked game of the year is. I was so nervous that like, oh, I hope Mike goes and approves what my number 1 game is. I really want him to like it. So thank you for validating what my personal tastes are, Mike.
Hey, that means a lot. That should mean a lot because my game of the year is Tears of the Kingdom.
There we go.
To the surprise of nobody.
Straight to it.
To the surprise of nobody. That is my game. There's so many system implementations, so it is not a perfect game. But think of it this way. Here's the benchmark, okay? Tears of the Kingdom, so the benchmark for quality, for goodness, whatever you want to call it, okay? Here it is. Some games are a little bit above, some meet it, some a little bit above or below, whatever. Tears of the Kingdom just kind of went like this. So even with its shortcomings, like the 5th Sage and some of the mechanics, whatever, it didn't jive with everybody. It was so ambitious and so much stuff, not just fluff, but like mechanics and things that the developers worked on that I blow my mind how they did it. They just went so far above that they're like off the screen. So even when those flaws come up, it's like, oh, well, it's still well above the benchmark. It's so far above it, whether it jived with you or not. And I think that's the thing, is that some people jived with it, some people didn't with certain aspects of it. And I do think that it's a little bit too bloated in the story. The rest of it is up to the player, how much you play. The art style in this game holds up remarkably well, even on the age switch. On big old blown up TV, still looks fantastic. It is so good. And in OLED, it is gorgeous to look at. The finale, as Scott said, is so damn good. It is the best. I'm gonna say it. It is the best Zelda finale of all the Zelda games. And I love me some Wind Waker finale with the sword in the head. This blows it out of the water. 100% blows all of them out of the water. And the biggest thing is the sense of sheer exploration and awe that carried over from Breath of the Wild was multiplied by 1,000. This entire year, I played some bangers. We all played some boppers of games, okay? I did not feel the same sense of exploration and awe in any of those. That is literally the only reason why Lies of P didn't win my game of the year, is because there's so many things it did right, but the one thing that Tears of the Kingdom did is just like, what's over there? And knowing that you can, like what Scott said, I didn't explore that area. I'm going to leave it unknown, because that's kind of what makes the real world interesting, is you don't know everything. So you still have room for wonder in your life, even amidst misery and bad stuff. You still have that sense of maybe there's something there. That's Tears of the Kingdom. And it just never stops. It never stops. And for me, actually, it'll be different than Scott. Getting back into it will be easy, because it'll just be, I don't have to worry about the story. I don't have to go somewhere. I'm going to go that direction and see what's over there. And now I got the guidebook. So, and Scott has the guidebook too. I'm just going to look at that and just like read up on it and be like, oh yeah, that's stuff I didn't put one and one together there. Tears of the Kingdom, best game of the year for me. Favorite game of the year for me. Good swan song for the Switch. Like the perfect, like, end it now. Go on to the successor now. You're good.
Tears of the Kingdom is not on my top 3 list. That being said, objectively, it is one of the most impressive feats in gaming that we've ever seen. What they have done, let alone on the Switch hardware, oh my goodness, what they have done is just incredible. So, while personally I got kind of bored after a while, and what Scott said is pretty much the point. I should have followed just Matt, just beat the story, and then you can come back to it. That's what I should have done. The game objectively, what they have done with their mechanics and features and things is stupendous. I think that's a great choice. Not personally on mine, but again, objectively, it's one of the best games ever made, just with what they're able to accomplish in there. It's a little much.
In 10, 15 years, people are going to look back at Tears of the Kingdom and be like, so these things kind of came from that. And there'll be new ideas, not in Tears of the Kingdom, but it was started with that game. I fully believe that.
Absolutely. I think Tears of the Kingdom is a good pick. You both had it on your list, which is cool. Not on mine, but very, very good games. Before we wrap up, I do want to talk about games we did not play that look pretty good. We're not going to go into details. We just made some quick lists of games that we haven't played yet that look pretty fun. So if your game wasn't on the list or on this list, I don't care. So games to me that look pretty good that I haven't played: Alan Wake 2. Never played one, but I really like Control, which is set in the same universe.
You need to play one. You need to play one.
I know.
Bubble.
I think I have the remaster on my PS Plus. So Alan Wake 2 looked good. Baldur's Gate 3, well, not really a game for me. What they've done is super impressive. Super Mario RPG, I definitely want to get to. Hi-Fi Rush looked like a lot of fun.
Hey, don't skip Wonder. Don't skip Mario Wonder.
I guess Wonder. RPG I'm more excited for. Sea of Stars was gifted to me by Cube. I will be playing that one, so it's a matter of just getting to it. Persona 4 Golden was gifted to me as well by Chrome. I'll get to that too eventually. Street Fighter 6 looked pretty fun, and Persona Tactica looked pretty fun for me. So those are some games that I haven't played yet that looked like a lot of fun. What about you, Mike? What are some games that you haven't played that look pretty good for this year?
Alan Wake 2. Huge fan. Mm-hmm. Alan Wake 1. Loved Control. So Alan Wake 2. Baldur's Gate 3 for the reasons I think that's another game in 10 years we'll look back and go, whoa, wow. How did you do that? Street Fighter 6 looks dope. I can't believe I'm saying that. I really want to play it. And a little game called Dave the Diver. It looks ridiculously fun. So
you would love it.
Those are the games. And I guess Dredge is, I should have added Dredge. Dredge is in my queue to play. So Scott, what about you?
For me, it's going to be Super Mario RPG, something that's on my Christmas list. So hopefully I can go and get to that before the year is done. Darkest Dungeon 2. Absolutely love Darkest Dungeon 1. One of like the GOATs in my opinion. Only reason I didn't get Darkest Dungeon 2 is currently it's PC only. And even though I have a quote-unquote gaming PC right now, I very much would prefer to hold off to play it on console like I did Darkest Dungeon 1. Game that was Matt's Game of the Year. Resident Evil 4. I very much want to play it. I was kind of hesitant because I don't like the spook, like Matt discussed earlier about Dead Space. But knowing that me and Matt are kind of on the same spook level, hearing the praise that he said, like, I'm not bothered by the spook. This game is badass. That was like, all right, that's what I was waiting for. That was like, all right, I think I can do this now. I actually have that sitting over there ready to be played. So hopefully in the next week or two. And then finally, like Matt, Sea of Stars. So I didn't have anybody gift that to me because, that one's on Game Pass, but I have it downloaded, ready to go. So we'll get to Sea of Stars eventually.
All right, and there you have it. There are our games. Those are the Buds Bustin' Awards show picks. So you should go play those and go check them out. That being said, hey, you're super cool. You should totally like and subscribe to this channel. You should
Yes.
totally subscribe if you're listening on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, whatever audio platform. You should totally follow. You should totally give us a review as well. You know what?
Yes.
Even if you give us a terrible review, give us a review. That's still interaction, baby, and we'll take it. We will take it. Like, comment, go yell at us on Twitter. Go yell at us. Go find out our Discords. Go yell at us while we're on Twitch. By the way, did you know that we're on Twitch? At least some of us are. Scott one day will be. Celiac_Matt over here is on Twitch Mondays, Tuesdays, and various other days, and Thursdays, and various other days throughout the week, depending. I'm on Mondays and Tuesdays when my internet works, Spectrum. You jackasses. I'm so angry at them. But I am on Twitch. I am on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm all over the place. Bauer Tendo. And like I said, Scotty Porta Potty, Hero Omega Man, SM Steven streams for that one day he does start streaming. We appreciate you. So you should show us a little appreciation, right? Little guilty likes. I'll take those likes, baby.
I would subscribe to your podcast. I'm just saying, if you have
Every one of us, yep, every one of us would do that. You're right, Scott.
Won't you
Legit.
return the favor?
Won't you be our subscriber?
Ooh.
Don't gaslight us, folks.
Speaking of gaslighting, Scott, I think we have a viewer question.
I heard you had a question. So many questions. Why don't you ask your question and the buds will bust an answer for you.
Oh golly, the viewer question for this week. I am so excited. It is one of my favorite segments. Dare I say, second favorite. This is from Zacromi Dahomey. I wonder who that was. And this question is, I actually love how this question goes all over the place. It is officially directed towards Mike, but the question is, how have you been enjoying Dark Tide, and how would you pitch it to the other buds? Matt has already agreed to eventually play it sometime, with it being Xbox only for console and not wanting to keep his wife away from the PC more. He hasn't tried it yet, but is interested. So I guess it's more directly at pitching it to Scott. So I love how this started off like, hey, Mike. Oh, by the way, here's a big section about Matt, why he hasn't played it yet. Anyway, yeah. Scott, what do you think? Will you play it? I just love how you just kind of did a little trip with that. So I guess it's Mike to ask, but you're really asking me. I don't know how.
I'll facilitate it to you guys because that's how he wants me to do it, right? I love Dark Tide. This is another Warhammer 40k. I don't know all the lore I know from Z-Chrome. I'm like very much like Matt, where I'm like, I don't, in all honesty, I didn't really pay attention to any of the other stuff. The game looked cool. It's fun. It's super fun. It's Left 4 Dead 2, but updated and newer, and it's in space. It's great. I guess that's how I would pitch it to you guys. It's like Left 4 Dead 2, the good parts of Left 4 Dead 2. And for Matt, well, you got to play it on PC, right? It is on Game Pass.
That was a pure joke. I didn't even.
That's how I'm playing it, baby. I tried it out on Game Pass, and now I'm legitimately I might consider buying it down the road. So if it goes on sale, I'll probably buy it. It's that good. So Scott, it's on Game Pass. That's how I'd pitch it, Z-Chrome.
That's all you have to say. It's on Game Pass.
Praise the Game Pass.
I think what you need to do, Bauer, is when you do plan to stream a Dark Tide one, drag Scott into it. Or make it Planet Weekend. Drag him into it. It's on Game Pass.
Oh, yeah, we could play together. Yeah.
It could be Scott's blind. It could be a blind Scott playthrough with you.
Exactly. I do swear that if it does come to PlayStation, which sounds like it's not going to, the moment it does, I would buy it on PlayStation. Just saying, I would buy it on PlayStation. All right. Scott, you asked the question. Scott, you need to ask a second question of yourself. Very important. Ask yourself the question, Scott.
Geez, Scott, do you have a Scotty Porta Potty rant this week? Oh, do I have a rant this week?
Let's go.
Look over there, he just doesn't care. He's going off on a crowd of people, throwing words in the
It's rant time.
Listen up, potty maniacs. You know what really grinds my gears? Entitlement. In particular, you feeling so entitled to get a Scotted Porta Potty rant every single week. Well, you know what? Tough shit, kid. God bless America.
That's my favorite rant you've ever done. I wonder where Cube's going to rank this. Cube's made a ranking of all of your rants. Where does this one fall, Cube? I need to know. It's the anti-rant one. I love it. The anti-rant rant. All right, fine. We're going to wrap things up. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us as we dove into our favorite games of 2023. What I would love to hear from you is, what are your favorite games of 2023? What have you played the most? What do you like? What do you disagree with us? Let us know in comments on the YouTubes or Twitches, Discords, what have you. Let us know. I'm very curious. Thank you so much for hanging out. We love you. I'm going to get my face in the camera here. Hey, I'm going to kiss you. I'm going to kiss you goodbye. All right, bye.